bid you welcome. Hope you enjoy the show. Hello, 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 hello. Claim your fortune, tell me what you've been told. Hello, 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 hello.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to What Is True show tonight. And we have another interesting show that you will see that there's going to be a lot of good points coming out here about Leo Frank and what happened with him some years ago. Talk about the ADL. We're going to talk about how the Jews kind of run things around here like usual. But I'm going to let my brother Joe take it over right now. Because this is really his expertise on this one. He's the one that actually brought it to my attention when he did, and he's done a lot of work on it. And we just think people should know about this case and the repercussions of this case even today, and how it actually brought the ADL into play, and how they came into play in this century, or the last century there. So anyway, Joe, why don't we get started with the Leo Frank case, and let's go from there.
Well, I have a book called The Murder of Little Mary Phagan, and her last name is pronounced Phagan, Phagan, a true story by Mary Phagan. And this Mary Phagan that wrote the book is a relative of the Mary Phagan that's in the story that deals with Leo Frank. And this case is really interesting. It's actually quite aggravating, especially to myself, because when I see the Jewish role in this, it gets me so mad, because you would think that when people see somebody who commits a murder and does some really diabolical, despicable things, that, why would they take the person's side? Well, that's not the case with the Jews. The Jews, what they do is, if the person murdered somebody or did something despicable, they're going to do everything they can to protect their name. And that's exactly what they've done with this Leo Phagan case.
Leo Frank.
Leo Frank case. And what it also does is it goes into the origins of the Anti-Defamation League and how it got started. And when you think of how it got started on this note, this is a bad start, showing you that this organization, the ADL, is one big despicable organization. I can't. There's not enough words that I could use to describe you could use the word hate towards the ADL, because they are despicable. As far as I'm concerned, they're anti-American. They're the Antichrist, or a Antichrist in my eyes, in the way they do things, bribery, propaganda that backs them up, and it's just despicable. So anyways, those are my good words. You should hear my bad ones. But anyways, the book by Mary Phagan, what's interesting about this book, which I'll just go into a little bit, is she wanted to know what happened in this case. And since she was the granddaughter, the relatives of this situation here, so she started looking into it. And what she found, she was quite honest in her book. She wrote the good, the bad, the ugly. She really wasn't out. She didn't know what she was going to find, to be really honest with you. So when she wrote this book, she just saw where it was going, where it went, and everything else. And what she found that's really troublesome is that when she got into the case, and then she's given us basically a little bit of her opinion here and there, and she's still not taken aside until you sort of get to the end of the book. And what happened with her is that in the 1980s, the ADL came in to try to exonerate Leo Frank from the murder of Mary Phagan, and I'm just going to go into what happened with her. Then we'll go into what the whole situation is. So what happened is she was at the not the trial, but where the ADL came in, and they tried to exonerate him and this and that. At the first meeting that they went to back, I believe, in the 80s, they were invited to go to the meeting, and they stopped whatever the Jews wanted to do to change history and everything else. Well, the next meeting that happened a couple of years later, they weren't permitted to go. And what happened is the Jews playing their little politics and everything else, and getting in touch with the criminal agencies and everybody else. And then what happened is they changed everything to be the opposite of what the Phagans wanted. And so the book ends basically in that mode, showing you what they did, which is typical because you figure it out. You got to say, well, this is what's going to happen anyways, because this is the way the Jews work. So, like I said, this book, The Murder of Little Mary Phagan, it ends on, from our viewpoint, on a note exposing how the Jews work, how the despicable way they work. Now, that being said, when you go online, you find out information. I came to a really interesting website. The article was called the White Information Network, or WIN, and it says News for Whites Worldwide. And it was September 11th, 2013. It says the name of this was Glory to Mary Phagan and a White Man Who Avenged Her. And this is from a website called Democratic Democratic, what's that word?
Well,
line. Democratic Republicans.us glory.
But the fellow that runs it, that's your name. His name, what is his name? The guy's name that runs the website.
I don't know. It doesn't say. Oh, right here.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't say it right here.
All right.
Because this just prints the article.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, there's an article called "Glory to Mary Phagan and the White Men Who Avenged Her." Democratic/Republicans.us /glory. Whatever. To Mary Phagan. You'll find it.
That means nothing. Yeah. All right.
Right. Whatever. So, anyways, I got on this website and I was saying, "Holy mackerel! This is one heck of a website in exposing this case." So basically, I'm going to read some of the things that are out of the website that talks about this, because it was very well done. I actually printed the whole thing, and it was like 59 pages. It took a while to print it, but the thing is, it's a lot of really good information if you ever have a chance.
Well, why don't you start from the beginning?
So I'm going to do it. I'm going to start now.
That's how it does it. Okay.
All right, so here we go. So what happened here, here's how it starts. It says, "I hope everyone reading the below will hereby understand just how important this 100-year-old murder in a pencil factory really was, and how relevant it remains to our day. Mary Phagan was a beautiful little 4'11" girl, a fine daughter, and a perfect employee in the days of child labor, who at the age of 13 worked 55 hours a week for factory superintendent Leo Frank. But this little miss fought like a tiger to her very death against the fiendish Jew pervert Leo Frank when the hideous Hebrew demanded sex from her. The Jews have done a 1937 movie with Lana Turner about it. I believe it's called They Won't Forget. A 1964 television movie, Profiles in Courage, glorifying the crooked Georgia governor who tried to get Leo Frank off, and went to crank out two major movies in 1987 with Jack Lemmon, The Murder of Mary Phagan, and again in 2009, The People versus Leo Frank. It says all part of the drumbeat on white prejudice to guilt trip all white people, and especially Southerners, from framing the poor victim of anti-Semitism, Leo Frank. The guilt trip hoax surrounding Leo Frank was merely a trial run, a prep for the gigantic Jewish Holocaust hoax after World War II, and the total defeat of the Jews. Frank was convicted by a jury of murder despite massive newspaper pressure, and was finally lynched, led straight to the founding of the vicious ADL. And then it says here, Mary Phagan prosecutor Hugh Dorsey, publisher Tom Watson, and the Cream, right vigilantes whose burst with guns drawn into a Georgia state prison and strung up the pedophile rapist murder Frank, hanging him high as he faced poor little Mary's farmhouse. All these brave whites were the righteous heroes in the highest traditions of the Aryan race. The leader of the resolute white men who brought the convicted murder Frank to justice after 2 long years of Jewish legal shenanigans, and the child killer's every appeal had been rejected, including by the U.S. Supreme Court, was the duly elected sheriff of Cobb County, Georgia, M. George Swanson. No real white man loving our women and girls as the treasures they are could do otherwise, in letting a murderer go free, not as bad as the murder itself. Now, so anyways, what happened here is it goes into the situation showing you, what basically happened with Mary Phagan. She was a 13, 14-year-old girl, worked at the pencil factory, and when you look at everything that happened here, Mr. Leo Frank basically, ran the pencil factory, the people's wages and who they were and all that. And of course, he had access to a lot of the women and the girls that were there. And from what we gathered from the trial and everything else, Mr. Frank wasn't Mr. Holy Man, as the ADL would like you to see. He, on frequent occasions, it was told by the black men that worked there, would take women up to his place, and I think it was Collins, one of the black guys, or another one of the guys. They would stand watch while Mr. Leo Frank did his deeds or whatever. In the situation with Mary Phagan, what happened here is, he did his usual, put the guard up and this and that, but he got rid of the guy on watch very early one morning, which was kind of strange because the black guy, like, why am I not coming in early this morning? So apparently what happened is Mr. Leo Frank did his tried to molest, or he did, and he brutally raped this young girl, and he basically just threw her down the shaft on the floor in the building, where people found her the next morning. So this is the situation that happened there, and and this is the reason why the Anti-Defecating League, we call it, the Anti-Defamation League, came into existence. They came from the B'nai B'rith, B-R-I-T-H. And so what happened is they came in, and this to the trial, tons of lawyers to try to influence. Now here's what they did. It said they tried to influence the theater, newspapers, magazines, whenever and whoever would criticize anything about this trial or the Jews. And that's exactly what they did. So as we go on here, I gotta take my glasses off because I can't see this. Okay, so what happened here is, if you take the situation that happened. Let's see. There was a couple of people involved in here. One of these guys' name was Conley, and another guy's name was Newt Lee. He was another man that they brought to the trial to talk about what happened in the case. Now, what's interesting about this is you got to remember this was down south back in 1913. Now, how did the Southerners view the black man back then? And yet, the white people took the side of the black men giving the testimony. This was very, very unusual. You really wouldn't hear this. But what did the Jews do? The Jews who speak of diversity and the NAACP and all this stuff now, they try to slander and defame these black men, saying they were liars and this and that. And yet the jury believed
Jim Conley.
Yeah, Jim Conley and this other guy, Newt Lee. So let me just go into some point here, because this article is a very long article here. But so what happened here? Let's see. They were threatening the black men. With they would have got the death, death for this. And so it says here, Leo Frank had told Newt Lee, the pencil factory night watchman, to come in earlier than usual. This is what I mentioned in the beginning. At 4 p.m. on the Saturday when the murder was committed. But Frank was extremely nervous when Newt Lee arrived, because it says here the killing of Mary Phagan had occurred between 3 and 4 hours before, and the body was still in the building. And he insisted that Lee leave and come back in 2 hours. When Lee then suggested he could just sleep for a couple of hours on the premises, and there was a cot in the basement near the place where Lee would ultimately find the body, Frank refused to let him. Lee could also have slept in the pocket room adjacent to Frank's office, but Frank insisted that Lee would had to leave and have a good time, he said. So that's what he kind of wanted him to do. So in other words, there was all these shenanigans going on here. He could, if everything was normal, he would have stayed in the building, and slept in the cot or been in the room next to where his room was, Leo Frank's office was. But no, he didn't even want him in the building. Leo Frank had officially started to work at the National Pencil Factory on Monday morning, August 10th, 1908, 5 years earlier. 2 days later, on September 1st, 1908, he was elevated to a position of superintendent of the company and served in this capacity until he was arrested on Tuesday morning, April 29, 1913. Now, it says here, while the rapist's murder was in jail, pro-Frank forces actually planted a bloody shirt of in Newt Lee's house so as to send this perfectly innocent man to death. Early in the investigation, when both Lee Frank and Newt Lee were being held and some suspicion was still directed at Lee, a bloody shirt was discovered in a barrel at Lee's home. Investigators became suspicious when it was proved that the bloody marks in the shirt had been made by wiping it unworn in the liquid. The shirt had no trace of body odor, and the blood had fully soaked even the armpit area, even though only a small quantity of blood was found at the crime scene. This was the first sign that money was being used to procure illegal acts and interfere in the case in such a way as to direct suspicion away from Leo M. Frank. This became a virtual certainty when Lee was definitely cleared. Why would an innocent man have a shirt in his house with Mary Phagan's blood on it unless someone else had put it there? So do you see the despicableness that these people went to make this man Newt Lee look like he was the guilty party? This is how the Jews work. They will do anything to get their way, to get their way, and of course, in this case, to get Leo Frank off the case. So, subsequently, goes on, the Jew tactic had been blamed to blame the other black man, Jim Conley. Anybody but Saint Leo, the innocent, against whom 19 of his female employees testified as a leecher. And now, you hear that? 19 of his female employees testified that Leo Frank was a leecher. as far as we're all concerned, a sexual predator, pervert, despicable man. And the ADL, I know you're probably listening to this, and that's exactly the type of people you defend. You despicable people. Well, anyways, that was what they did with the two black men in the case. Of course, the Jews, like I said, they kept coming out trying to defend them. They had a slew of lawyers and this and that. So anyways, it says here, far from being motivated by blind hatred, now this is what happened here, is it says the lynchers, men, what they sell, let me just go into what happened here. Leo Frank, because this article isn't saying it right, I probably will see it later. What happened here with Leo Frank is Leo Frank was convicted, of murder of little Mary Phagan. And for that, Leo Frank got the death penalty. Now, through their little finaglism, the Jews pulled a few strings with the governor, the wimpy governor, and totally got the people in the town mad as HE double hockey sticks. And they changed the verdict to life in prison. Now, this didn't do the townspeople much. They were ripping. So what happened was they took law into their own hands. Now, when Leo Frank was in jail prior to this, I don't think too many other people liked him either. And he got into a fight, and somebody slashed his throat and almost killed him. They said it almost severed his, it was quite a big gash. But they saved his life, and he was still living. So anyways, I'm telling you that because I'll tell you what happened when he got hung. So what happened was the people, everybody was involved in taking this guy out of the prison or the jail, and from top to bottom. And they took him and they hung him. And if you look at the picture of Leo Frank when he's being hung, you'll notice his neck is really, really tilted because it probably opened up the wound to when he was stabbed in the neck. So his neck is really, turned really, on its end. And so they hung this guy, and that wasn't too good. So anyways, let me see here. There was more stuff here. Let me see here.
I want to bring something out here that I think is pretty interesting. Even though Leo Frank was convicted, this was a start. The Anti-Defamation League started here in around 1913, and they had about 500 members. But what was interesting about this is they actually voted unanimously in September to re-elect Leo Frank to the second term as their leader, and he ran the affairs of the B'nai B'rith chapter behind bars until September 1914. He was not reelected again for his third term, but ever since, the ADL, has been in the forefront of perpetuating the hate crime hoax, that people were saying, hang the Jew and kill the Jew. But the point is, the fact that the Jews even had this guy still, looking like he was a good guy here is unbelievable. It's almost like this guy could do no wrong, even though he was proven guilty. You would think the least they would have done was take him off the being the president of the B'nai B'rith, but they didn't even do that. That just shows you how insensitive and insane they are to do this, to make this guy still the president of the ADL at that point in time. I just thought I'd bring that up because any normal organization, if they had a person, let's say if this was the Ku Klux Klan and the head man of the Ku Klux Klan was a convicted murderer and this and that, I don't think people would not be saying anything about that. They'd make a big deal about that and I would even think some people in the Ku Klux Klan, if the guy was a real murderer and did something, murdered a little girl, I think they'd want him out of there too. So it just shows you how the Jews look at the things that they do wrong, and when it comes to whites, it's a whole different nature, isn't it? It's a different story. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring that fact up there.
Well, what was interesting too is, like I said, a jury of white men taking the sides of these black men. Because here's what it says here. It says the evidence against Leo Frank, including most of his own infuriating and suspicious behavior before and during the trial, was so overwhelming that a deep South jury in a city which had a huge race riot just 7 years earlier over the issue of a black raping a white woman, nevertheless took the word of the black janitor Jim Conley over that of the white Jew Leo Frank. Now, nobody's saying Jim Conley wasn't, he wasn't really the greatest person in the world. So Jim Conley was a disreputable person and incompetent employee who could not even run the freight elevator correctly in the pencil factory, and was thus switched to janitorial work. The all-white jury nevertheless believed him, desperately knowing, via the newspaper and Leo Frank's lawyers, about his many arrests and his 4 weeks on a chain gang for various crimes such as fighting and drunkenness. There was currently no sympathy on the part of the Atlanta jury for the ne'er-do-well black criminal Conley. Conley went on after Leo Frank... Oh, this is saying what happened later with Conley. Conley went on after the Leo Frank trial to be arrested, convicted, and then served 15 years for burglarizing a liquor store, serving, by the way, a shotgun blast to the store owner. So Conley, this man wasn't really the greatest guy in the world, but when it came to this case and the evidence, and when they weighed the evidence of the behavior and Leo Frank himself, I mean, Leo Frank used to see prostitutes, and this is what really bothers me about like the ADL. My question is to the ADL, like, well, this guy was just a pervert. 19 women testified against him. Why would you? I mean, you defend a man that had 19 women that testified that you either had sexual advances or sex or this or that. 19 of them.
According to this here, if anybody wants to go look at the Incogmen his website, I mean, this fellow Incogmen net, it's incogman.net. You have to go to his website, and I'm kind of looking at it right now. But anyway, the point he brings out here is that Leo Frank, he actually raped somebody even before Mary Phagan. In 1912, it says Leo Frank raped another one of his child employees. So it just shows you the propensity of this guy and what he did. I mean, this is what this guy did. All right, but no one really knew about this. He was a pedophile. Leo Frank was a pedophile.
He's a sexual predator.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's basically typical Jewish, and putting on the airs of running the B'nai B'rith and all that, the ADL, and putting on the big airs, making it look like. And I'm not going to get into it exactly now, but the videos, I don't think they're here, but there was a couple of videos that they had about Leo Frank. Oh, when you see him, it's just despicable.
Let's get back to the Leo Frank case. Go ahead, Joe.
So anyways, information here. Let's see here. It says there was strong evidence against Leo Frank. It was a case of evidence which was furnished by one Jim Conley, the Atlanta police, and 19 female employees of the National Pencil Factory. Leo Frank himself, of course, his actions themselves earned him the verdict of a death sentence. After the conviction for murder, every level of the judicial system up until including the United States Supreme Court rejected Leo Frank's appeals. Now that's interesting. That would show you the power of the Jews. Imagine that, having this go up to the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, unbelievable the power these people had. So anyways, I'm just going on here. some. Let me just see here. I'm just going into some of the affidavits and what was said here. There was a in this. Let me see. I'm just going to read something here about the. It says here there was a Ruth Robinson, and it goes here. Have seen Leo Frank talking to Mary Phagan. He would stand just close enough to her to tell her about her work, would show her how to put rubbers in the pencils, and would just take up the pencil and show her how to do it. He called her Mary. And then this other person, Dewey Howell, says, he stayed in the home of the Good Shepherd in Cincinnati. Worked at the pencil factory for 4 months. Have seen Mr. Frank talk to Mary Phagan 2 or 3 times a day in the metal department. Have seen him hold his hand on her shoulder. He called her Mary and would stand pretty close to her. And then when he's cross-examined, it says all the rest of the girls were there when he talked to her, and they didn't know much about what he was talking about. So apparently, in these affidavits, or the people they were talking about, it was showing you that apparently there was some type of relationship, or he was touching her and this and that, which probably led on to other stuff. Now we go on to this here. It says the black cook. Now this is an interesting thing. The black cook, Manola McKnight, who worked at the Frank Selig home, and her common-law husband, Albert McKnight, were both interrogated as to what they might have seen, heard, or overheard. Manola McKnight's report was as devastating as a hydrogen bomb to Frank. But Leonard Dimenstein, notice that name, claims she was forced by the police to say it, noting that she repudiated her affidavit shortly afterward. But of course she did. She had to. She had to keep working for the Frank family to feed herself in order to survive. There was no food stamps back then. If you were poor and got fired, you starved. And who would hire a black woman as a domestic after she had been fired for testifying about private matters she witnessed in the home? No one would. So that brings up the testimony of this Miss Manola McKnight. See, the Jews are going to say, well, she recanted on her affidavit because the police forced her to say it. But she was in the house, and she brought out some interesting things. Now here's what it was said in the affidavit below. Manola had just accused one member of confessing he had committed a rape and murder. Her other employees she accused thereby of covering up that murder confession. They were all covering up how bad and strained the Frank marriage was, which the police and jury would see as the motive to seek sex elsewhere. When marriages are very bad, that is when people with opportunity stray. Dimenstein sort of ignores the glaring fact that her sole income as a uneducated black woman 100 years ago in the segregated South came from the Franks. So this woman, like he said, her income came from the Franks, and she, well, what could she do, So it says that Manola had indeed told the truth when pressured by the police. And of course, they had to pressure her, knowing she was facing the counter pressure at work of being fired by the Franks if she revealed the truth. So Manola, Katrina Rock, the cops, and Hard Place, the Franks, both told the truth and then recanted it. It was the only thing she could do. All Manola, she's also called Magnolia, had to do was return from the police station and walk through that Frank door and try to get back into the kitchen, and undoubtedly she got into it with both barrels with the Selig Franks. What did you say to the police, Manola? She doubtless got it from Leo, who was facing a slight problem called the gallows, and Lucille, that's his wife, facing disgrace, widowhood, and the end of her husband's middle-class income, and from Lucille's 2 parents, very prominent members of the synagogue. So this put an interesting situation up for the wife of Leo Frank. I can bet. Actually, I'm not sure if this article goes into it, but it also said that when she may not have been buried.
I got the I got the thing right here.
Oh, does it say
well,
that?
if you since you brought it up here, if you have any doubts about his guilt, okay, just go back to see what happened with the wife, Lucille. All right. So if you go to the Mount Carmel Cemetery in Queens, New York, and you visit Leo Frank's grave, and then you'll see to the left of it, you'll see there's an empty grave. Now it was supposed to be reserved for his wife. So the question is, why is it empty? I mean, normally wouldn't a wife be buried next to the husband? Well, when you look at history, the Jewish mass media there, they try to make it look like they had a real loving, great relationship, and she had a great love for her husband, and this or that. Now she didn't die until 1957, but guess what? She's not buried next to him in the grave. So the point is, she probably knew what was going on here, and she was probably disgusted with him, and she wanted no part of him. So they didn't. I mean, imagine that they didn't even bury her next to the grave. And not to change the subject, but another famous Jew who didn't get buried next to her husband was the Schindler's List movie there.
Yeah,
Schindler, Mrs. Schindler. Because since he was a runaround and he was involved in a lot of shady things, his wife never was buried next to him either. So I guess when the Jewish women are not happy with something, they don't want to be buried next to him.
Well, he probably cheated. Schindler's List. He probably cheated with. Remember, he had all these women working for him. Same like in the pencil factory, and they make a big thing. Oh, he saved all their lives. But he was a runaround guy too.
But what happens to a lot of the Jewish men, businessmen, especially the movie industry? That's why they call it the. What do you call it when the women go into the
bed?
The couch?
Yeah. Casting couch.
Casting couch.
Yeah.
And they said that, I mean, it's a well-known story that these Jewish men, I mean, that's all they do is have sex with all the women who want to get parts. They won't get the part unless they have sex with them. So this is a well-known thing. So I don't know. Maybe it's it seems like it's something about these Jewish men and being runarounds or something like that. But so far in the two cases we've seen here, the Frank case, Leo Frank case, and the Schindler's List guy, they seem to be not the best characters, not the best husbands you'd want to have. Well, I just wanted to bring that up because, again, if you ask me, that would be the biggest telltale sign why there was a problem with them in their marriage and this and that.
Right. So what happened in the murder itself? It says Leo Frank got drunk in the evening of the murder. Leo Frank confessed to the murder to his wife. He quarreled with his wife before the murder. He told his wife he was saving his kisses for another, and thus he would not kiss her. So apparently there must have been a problem there. And why did Leo Frank thoughtfully buy his wife a box of chocolates at the pharmacy at 6:30 p.m.? And Leo Frank was suicidal on the night of the murder, asking for his pistol to kill himself. I wish he did. Hey, if he killed himself, the ADL wouldn't have came into existence.
Yeah.
And it says Leo Frank may have shown remorse to his wife about the murder. Yeah, nice time to show him remorse after he kills himself. It says here, I can tell Mr. Frank had done something wrong. I had done something. As they act strange, Mrs. Frank tells Magnolia. Every day, not to forget what to say if they come for her to get her to court again. Mrs. Frank had a call with Mr. Frank in the morning of the murder. She asked Mr. Frank to kiss her, but then he said he was saving his kisses for whatever and would not kiss her. Magnolia said she heard Mr. Frank say she would never live with him again, and for she knew he had killed that girl and that they had the right man and ought to break his neck. Oh my God. Well, anyways, that was some of the information there. So anyways, let me just go on here. There's some more stuff here. I'm just trying to catch up on this. I'm trying to get to the part of the ADL when they came in. But let me see here.
Well, I'll say this, that when you talk to anybody that was on the Jewish side of these things, obviously they're going to say that the murder of Leo Frank was just pure anti-Semitism and hate, because he was a Jew. That's why they killed him. But we have to understand that the reason why he was hung and he was broke out of the place where he was being jailed up was the fact that the people didn't feel that justice was said. I mean, okay, it went from a death sentence, he was going to be killed, okay, to life in prison. And that's like just saying he wasn't guilty. I mean, like he didn't kill anybody. So obviously the lynchers, they weren't happy about that, and that's why they had to take it upon themselves to fix the situation, and they did. It had nothing to do with the fact that he was Jewish. I doubt at all, because I think if whatever he was, anybody that killed a young girl back in those days that got off on something like that, I think anybody would be mad and they'd want to kill you too. So again, the Jews can't use this the anti-Semitic card like they always do about him, because it just doesn't fit here.
Well, the interesting fact here that was brought out is that the governor that was the governor at the time, it's the Governor Slayton and his wife. The governor scandalously and unconceivably formed a law partnership with Leo Frank's defense lawyer, Luther Rossner, just before the trial began. And later, the governor law partner commuted Frank's death sentence to life in prison, with just 5 days left in his term as governor. This was the final outrage that triggered the lynching by Leo Frank. So can you imagine that? The governor, just 5 days left in his office, he commutes what's the name, Leo Frank, from the death sentence to life in prison, and now the shenanigans of him working with Luther Rosser just before the trial began. Unbelievable. See, there's all these little things, and you wonder why the people in the town really went nuts. So anyways, a lot of things that happen here. Let's see here. It says there was a judge in this case. Judge Rohn could have given Frank a new trial when the defense petitioned him on more than 100 grounds. In fact, nothing in the defense team's petition for a new trial or appeals even mentions one single incident of anti-Semitism, making most of Dinestein's manufactured claims about anti-Semitic conspiracies into nothing more than a maudlin, tawdry hate crime hoax. So you can see what happened there. The Jewish lawyer Dinestein tried to bring up anti-Semitism because that's why they wanted to get Leo Frank. And believe me, there really wasn't no anti-Semitism at that time, at least. I mean, when you think about it, after all this happened, then we have anti-Semitism because of the way these people acted, the way the lawyers acted, and everything else. So it says that much of the public became certain that Leo Frank was guilty and highly resolved that Frank must be punished by death and not escape justice via his wealthy friends. Crimes against white women were not viewed passively in the Deep South. They resulted in hundreds of lynchings in Georgia between 1890 and 1910. Honor was the basis of Southern manhood and of female sexuality. Imagine that. I mean, they didn't take this lightly. Atlanta's huge problem with prostitution was seen as a great scandal, and the married Leo Frank, it emerged during the trial, was a regular customer of prostitutes. For these reasons, Frank became by the summer of 1913 the most loathed criminal in Georgia history. So anyways, the question that arises concerning the May 24th, 1913 indictment rendered against Leo Frank, what compelled 21 grand jurors with several Jewish members. Now notice this, there were several Jewish members amongst them to vote unanimously against Leo Frank. Well, only 12 votes were needed to indict. Was it the compelling facts, testimony, and evidence presented to them? or some kind of anti-Semitic blood libel conspiracies. So they don't tell you. I mean, I don't know why the Anti-Defamation League doesn't tell you that, but there were several Jewish members on the jury. And when they only needed 12 votes, they had 21 grand jurors, and they all said he was guilty. So anyways, I thought that was pretty good. I mean, I forgot about that. I remember that.
Well, I want to bring out this point. Well, you kind of touched on it a little bit in 1986. Away with it, and not that he got away with it. Remember, he would have been sent to prison for life. But that too was too good of a deal for Leo Frank, because he should have been hanged right away. But it went on for years. His appeals and this and that. But eventually. It caught up to them, and they took the law into their own hands and said, enough is enough. We're not letting this go on any longer. We're gonna kill them ourselves. And not one of those men were prosecuted for what they did, which is pretty interesting if you ask me.
We have a video, but we'll play it so you can hear it. Nathaniel Cantor does a good piece on the ADL. And I'm going to play that so you can hear that. So let's see. I just hope I got the volume right here. And
the Anti-Defamation League, whose agenda extends far beyond its stated purpose of defending Jews from defamation, announced this week that it has teamed up with NBC to promote diversity. These 10-second TV spots are currently being aired as, although they are obvious Big Brother brainwashing propaganda, public service messages interspersed between NBC's regular daily programming. The ADL chose Jewish comedian Andy Cohen to launch its flagship diversity message, with Cohen lecturing all the goyim as if they were childish racist baboons to love thy neighbor, even if thy neighbor happens to be different than thyself.
The phrase is love thy neighbor, not love thy neighbor only if they're just like you.
Now, diversity, as far as the ADL deigns to use it, is simply a camouflage for their agenda to fragment a white Christian presence in America, aiming for its ultimate dissolution. Dr. Kevin MacDonald, author of Culture of Critique, gives probably the best explanation of Jewry's fear of and quest to destroy white Christian culture in this recent interview.
Jews have had a huge animosity towards the culture that did that. Jews, as I said, have because they see Western culture as fundamentally anti-Jewish, going back to the Middle Ages, they have wanted to essentially end European domination of this society. And I think they're well on the way to doing that.
As for the ADL teaming up with NBC to promote diversity, that is, inundating America with multiculturalism, multiracialism, and multicreedalism, this is nothing new for this powerful Jewish organization. ADL's director, Abraham Foxman, who sports a Jewish yarmulke to show the ADL's affiliation with Judaism, recently told an audience that the ADL has penetrated into America's public schools with its diversity message.
Some of us go to schools, we have bearing witness, we have all kinds of programs.
Targeting children in their impressionable years, kindergarten through 5th grade, Foxman has infiltrated our public schools with propagandizing books such as Who Belongs Here? An American Story, which purposely omits the record that America's pilgrims wished to create a white European Christian alternative to British monarchical rule, and the book Black is Brown is Tan, which promotes interracial marriages. Believe me when I tell you, for I grew up as a Jew, there is nothing more abhorrent to Jewish parents than a son or daughter marrying a black or anyone of various shades of brown or tan. The perpetuity of Jewish lineage depends on children marrying those of their own race, as far as Jewish parents are concerned.
I'm going to tell you the most important thing you have to remember. About all that I learned in the world, this is it. No matter what happens, you marry a Jewish girl. That's right, your mother was right. You marry a Jewish boy. There's nothing more important in the whole world than this. And there's another reason why you better marry a Jewish girl, so your mother doesn't break both your legs.
But for the Goyim, not only is interracial marriage acceptable, but advances the ADL's agenda to destroy the last remaining power bloc that could potentially oppose Jewish hegemony, namely white Christianity. The hypocrisy and double standard of the ADL is clear. While Foxman promotes a monolithic racial society for the State of Israel,
If you act out against Israel, you're acting out against the Jewish people.
he decries any form of white predominance in America. Foxman has often used his civil rights director, Deborah Lauter, to label any form of white political activism as right-wing extremism, with the threat that the ADL is monitoring extremists who favor Arizona's anti-immigration law.
We in the American Jewish community know too well the backlash that immigrants can get in this country. The Arizona legislative initiative, which was signed by the governor, is just not the right answer. We in the ADL monitor right-wing extremist groups, and I can tell you unequivocally that the National Socialist Movement, one of the leading neo-Nazi groups in this country, is reveling. They literally have been marching in Nazi uniforms, celebrating the implementation of this law in Arizona.
Attempting to drum up hysteria by selecting one or two so-called neo-Nazi groups as leading the anti-immigration cause so as to cast aspersion on valid and lawful opposition to immigration by respectable white American citizens. Lauter has also led the ADL's lobbying effort on Capitol Hill to pass the notorious DREAM Act, which grants to children of illegal aliens instant citizenship. Yet another ploy of the ADL to destroy white America. And apparently, they've got their puppet in the White House to push the DREAM Act through.
And I will keep fighting alongside many of you to make the DREAM Act the law of the land. Like all of this country's movements towards justice, it will be difficult and it will take time. I know some here wish that I could just bypass Congress and change the law myself.
In a society made up of multicultures, multi-races, and multi-creeds, which the ADL promotes in its push for diversity, there is only one minority that rises to the top and takes control. And that minority is that which Abraham Foxman represents, American Jewry. We can either have a Jewish America, which is now the case, or a Christian America, which we once had. Believe me when I tell you, there is no in-between.
All right, so that was Nathaniel, Brother Nathaniel, and a lot of people may say, why are you playing Brother Nathaniel? And I look at it this way. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So if he says what I feel is true, I have no problem using what he says. If you want to dispute Brother Nathan or whatever, that's up to you. But everything he said, I totally agree with. What the ADL is doing, the DREAM Act, and all this stuff. What we've been bringing out tonight about the ADL and how they work the media and how they work the newspapers and this and that to get things done their way. For instance, with this Leo Frank case, and that's why in the book Little Mary Phagan by Mary Phagan, she saw firsthand the divisiveness of the ADL on white America, especially, and how they will even what it brought out the fact about putting blood on the I think it was Newt Lee's coat, or the other guy, I think it was Newt, and to try to prove that he killed somebody with blood on it. This is how despicable these people are, and that's why I have no love for the ADL. I mean,
Well, here's something I just want to show. In 2003,
90 seconds.
In 2003, the Anti-Defamation League had a plaque put in the Mount Carmel Cemetery, where he's buried, and they said that Leo Frank. The trial of Leo Frank was motivated by rampant anti-Semitism of the time. Imagine that. And it says the founding of the Anti-Defamation League that same year was motivated by a passion to educate such injustice and bigotry. Despite his influence, Frank was abducted from his jail and lynched. ADL remembers the victim, Leo Frank, and likes to ensure that there will be no more victims of this injustice. So the point is that they make excuses for Leo Frank, and again, we don't make excuses for him. He was a pervert. He was a Jewish pervert. He did what was wrong, and he got what was coming to him. And that's the end of Leo Frank, and we're glad. We wish that it happened to more people that did the bad things like he did.
Right. Sexual predator.
Right.
Right. That's something that seems like the Jews like a lot for some reason. I don't know, as a profession.
All right. Well, anyway, that pretty much sums up our show. We don't have much more time left here. Well, hopefully we educated you a little bit on the Leo Frank case. Go to leofrank.org if you want to learn more about him. There's a lot there for you. So that pretty much concludes our show for tonight. We appreciate you listening to us, and we'll see you next week.
Okay. Goodbye.
Hello, hello. I bid you welcome, hope you enjoy the show. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Claim your fortune, tell me what you've been told. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello.
Growing up as a Jew, I saw a lot of double standards in play, if not to say downright hypocrisy. For instance, although we censored public figures for calling us Yids or Abes, we ourselves would call the Gentiles the Goyim. We call Gentile women shiksas, which comes from the Hebrew word shagets, which means unclean animal. I recall when black civil rights leader Jesse Jackson once referred to New York City as Hymietown, the entire Jewish community went into an uproar and forced Jackson to apologize. But behind closed doors, we called the blacks Schwarzes and Shooks. Speaking of the civil rights movement of the 60s, Jews were among the leaders, such as Stanley Levinson, key advisor to Martin Luther King, agitating for desegregation. However, quite frankly, when it came to our own neighborhoods, we preferred segregation. In fact, many of my fellow Jews would have considered it a great shame to be so impoverished to be forced to move into a black neighborhood. But I was finally moved across the Rubicon when my bar mitzvah teacher, Mrs. Schechter, pulled a double standard on us in our comparative religions class. After studying every religion under the sun, Mrs. Schechter stood before us like a bull and forbade us to study Christianity because it was no more than a fairy tale. I said to myself, Western civilization for the past 2,000 years being formed by no more than a fairy tale? Come on, Mrs. Schechter, you're now going to have to prove that Judaism is no less than an illusion. The Jewish bias was clear to me, for the Talmud taught us that Jesus Christ was a magician, boiling in his own excrement in hell, and his holy mother a hairdresser and a prostitute. Say the same thing about Moses and Miriam, and the wrath of the entire Jewish community will fall on your head. For that matter, simply criticize Israel, like Jimmy Carter did in his best-selling book, Israel, Peace, Not Apartheid, and you'll be sued for $5 million. Well, I'm now safely within the fold of Orthodox Christianity. And like our Lord Jesus Christ taught us, we take the log out of our own eyes before we take the speck out of others.